William Kirk, I'll tell you something from the Washington gun law. You know, if the folks in Olympia ever got their act together, you'd be out of business. Wouldn't you like to be out of business? Aren't you sick and tired of talking about really bad gun legislation? Can't you do something else with your time?
I would love to do something else with my time, John. Thanks for having me. But
Sure.
Unfortunately, state of Washington is the gift that keeps on giving for the channel.
You follow other states and you see, would you say, where would you put us as far as, you know, just ridiculous laws? Are we right up there with Massachusetts and Illinois and California? Are we vying for number one?
Well, your gold medalist is always going to be California.
Yep.
I think Illinois and New York and New Jersey all come in there. But Washington has been working feverishly the last few years to put themselves on that short list with those states.
Well, what they've got cooking now will certainly let them move up. Which ones I don't want to talk about the good ones. I was watching you earlier. You had a SB 5056 talking about, if it gets hacked. I don't want to, because most of these are going to die. Let's talk about the restrictions that are coming for the law-abiding gun owner in the state of Washington. How do they plan on screwing us this year?
Yeah, good question. 3 bills in particular I want your listeners to pay attention to. They've all come out of the House committee now, which means they could be put to the floor for a vote. The first one is House Bill 1132. This would limit you to only be able to purchase one firearm every 30 days. It would also limit how much ammunition you can purchase in a single transaction. It would be akin to passing a law that says, hey, you can go to church, but only one Sunday a month. You can exercise your right to speak freely, but only on even numbered days of the year. It literally is a quota on the exercise of a right. And most offensive is that this law was passed in California 2 years ago, has never been implemented because every court in California, not very pro-Second Amendment courts, have all enjoined this law from ever taking effect because of its unconstitutional nature. It does not appear to be stopping the folks in Olympia from pushing forward on it, though.
So let's say they do pass the thing. It'll then get challenged in court almost immediately. And then they're going to take our tax dollars and they're going to fight in order to have this thing. And eventually, because you look at it and it's right there on the surface, you are creating a barrier to a right to have a firearm. So, but we'll use a lot of tax dollars and tie up some court time to have this one thrown out.
Yeah, and of course, when you try to start these challenges in the state court system, it's akin to throwing rocks at the moon. So really, the only avenue we have for any potential relief would probably be in the federal courts, and they move at a glacial pace.
Right. Okay, so that's one I can't, and then also I can't buy a certain amount. I'm only limited to, 1,000 rounds?
1,000 rounds, unless it's 50 BMG caliber, and then that would only be 100 rounds, but it's 1,000 rounds per transaction.
Because ultimately what they're trying to do is save lives.
Right, yeah, and we can see how well that's working for us because, as we know, our violent crime numbers have plummeted so much in the state since they began this process. Okay, so that's one. That'll probably pass, and that'll get challenged in the courts, and as you say, it'll take a long time. Give me another one that I can look forward to. Yeah, House Bill 1163 is as offensive as they get. This is a license that you must obtain from the state before you can purchase a firearm. Put other ways, you have to get a hall pass from the state before you can actually exercise a constitutional right. In order to get that license, you'll not only have to attend rather expensive and time-consuming classes, you will also be required to demonstrate live fire proficiency. Now, I'm not against training. There's no such thing as being overtrained. But to have these requirements in order to access and exercise a constitutional right, that's just not how our country was established. We're talking with William Kirk, Washington gun law. Mr. Kirk, on that particular one, let me just throw some problems that could come up. There'll be a limited number of government certified instructors, so the line will be long. There will be additional cost to sign up. There will be additional financial burden on the gun buyer to take the class, and then you're going to have to pass this test. What the rules are, they could make them difficult in order to hit something or timing, releasing a magazine, safety. They could make the bar very high to limit the number of people that could pass the test. And then they could also write in there, you only get 3 tries once a year in order to be able to pass this test, or something else, because ultimately it's so obvious, Bill. It's so obvious. They just don't want any guns. They just don't want anybody to have any guns. Right. Yeah, this is all about civilian disarmament. If it was about saving lives, we would have seen some progress in that department over the last few years. But instead, the numbers appear to be going in the wrong direction. What's even more offensive about this, though, John, is think of the woman who's going through a terrible breakup and her ex-boyfriend is just being a little psychotic. She might have a protection order, but that piece of paper is not going to save her. Now she has to get in line to take the class, then pay all the money. And then once she purchases the firearm, there's an additional 10-day waiting period by state law anyways. Now you're looking 40, 50, 60 days out. And during that time, her life is in jeopardy the whole time.
Right, because it's a pretty good chance her deranged boyfriend didn't go through the class, didn't pay the permit, and possibly purchased the gun somewhere else other than the state of Washington, might have gotten on the street. And now that guy's armed, but she's not. But let's face it, we have prevented someone from getting a gun, but the person we prevented from getting the gun is the person who should have the gun.
That's right, the good person.
How about
right.
the good
and all of these laws ever do. And this is the other thing offensive about what Washington State does, is because we know from Department of Justice statistics that 88.8% of all gun crimes committed nationwide are committed by individuals who are unlawfully possessing the firearm at the time the crime is committed. One would think the state legislature, knowing what the identifiable demographic group is, would pass the laws to go after that identifiable problem. But instead, they pass gun laws to go after people like you and me and all your listeners.
And they're making it, well, some of our listeners are bad, but they're making it also difficult. They're making it also sort of strange if you commit a crime with a gun in the state of Washington. They don't want to have, compounded additional sentences on top. I think this one's the worst of them all. And this is the insurance policy they want you to have in place. This is the best. Yeah. You could retire on this one, Bill. Go ahead.
Well, no, I'm going to move out of the state on this one.
All right, here we go.
That's where my channel suddenly changes the name to Idaho gun law.
Okay.
You're talking about House Bill 1504. Mandatory insurance, that is a policy that you must carry per firearm. Mm-hmm. And the policy is supposed to protect you from negligent discharge. Now think about it. If you have individual policies for every firearm and the policy has to designate the firearm, you've created the de facto gun registry, which we know the problems with that and the fact that it's unlawful. You can forego having to get insurance policies. All you have to do is self-insure yourself, and that it can be done as easily as just depositing $25,000 with the state of Washington Department of Licensing for every single firearm that you own.
And by the way, what insurance companies will provide this policy? There are not that many. That's
a great question. Because I've been doing some calling around.
Yeah.
And I've talked to some bigwigs in insurance companies. I've sent them the bill. I was like, hey, do you know any insurance company on God's green earth that offers a policy for this? And they all said, never heard of it.
Right. So, that's a shame. Too bad. I guess you can't get a policy, so I guess you can't get a gun.
Yeah. How unfortunate. What's also offensive is this is a bill that's sponsored by a freshman legislator out of Federal Way. And, we have put financial barriers up to the access of constitutional rights in the past. They were called poll taxes.
Yeah.
And the Supreme Court has spoken very loud and clear about that.
They ultimately, if they're what they want to do, and they've passed more than 200 and some gun laws in the last, you probably know the number, in the last, say 10 years, still the homicide rate continues to go up, right? Violence with the use of a firearm continues to go up. The people that have the guns that are law-abiding citizens, every single one of these laws only affects law-abiding citizens. And every time we do a story here at KIRO when I'm off the mic and it's somebody getting shot, I always say to Joe, we should pass another law that you're not allowed to murder people.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Fortunately, we've had that law on the books since about the time we became a state, but apparently not everyone's gotten that memo.
So aren't you just sick and tired of banging your head against the wall?
Yeah, it's really, really frustrating. What's most frustrating is listening to my viewers and listeners just express their outrage. Their entire lifestyle is under attack right now in Washington State. It goes far beyond just our Second Amendment rights. Anyone with conservative ideals, their entire style of life is under attack right now by the state of Washington, and candidly, it's really disgusting.
And I think they also put these restrictions in because they kind of want to catch. So the law-abiding citizen that has a gun, they're now putting additional sort of restrictions on that person. Like, for instance, the gun has to be in your house if they pass this thing in that safe box. Well,
Well, yeah, there's a new safe storage law that's also kicking around this year, and it's really unfortunate because I actually think Washington's current safe storage law is a pretty good law.
Wow, wait a minute. Wait. You said something good about a gun law?
Let me explain why, though. The very last sentence of RCW 9.41.360 says that nothing in this section requires a person to store a firearm in any particular way. And what I've always said is safe storage provisions should be based upon your individual living situation. If you live at home in a condo by yourself and there's never kids or grandkids running around, I don't care if the thing's sitting out on the coffee table. Obviously, if you have a home where there's young kids that could access firearms, you have to be much more conscientious in the way you store firearms.
Right.
What Washington's current safe storage law says is simply if you're an idiot about the way you store your firearms and then bad things happen because of it, you can be on the hook for it.
Okay.
The new safe storage law, though, would mandate that if it's not on your person, it has to be locked away and unloaded, or essentially put in a location and in a condition that means you cannot use it to defend yourself and your family.
And I saw on your website you took this box to some place and you had a bunch of, these college kids in their sweatshirts. Yeah. And you put money inside the box. You say first one that can open the box gets the money.
Yeah.
And
so that's a stop box. You can check it out on the channel. It's actually a really very simple, reasonable safe storage device. But again, safe storage should be based upon individual needs. It is not for the state to determine how you defend your life.
Most of these, unfortunately, will pass. It'll be more restrictions. And then ultimately what happens is law-abiding citizens will not obey some of these laws because it doesn't serve their purpose to defend themselves. If I'm in bed and I want my gun and my gun is to the right of me, there's another one in the other drawer because God knows somebody wants to come in. I only have one chance. Well, that's right. I've got actually 9 chances to discharge that weapon to defend my life. But I don't want to put it in a box. But if they're also going to have additional restrictions on me, then I'm now violating the law that I feel is cumbersome and burdensome and doesn't allow me to defend myself. And then they would say, well, you broke that law. I know, but I broke the law because I had to in a way because I wanted to make sure if somebody came into my house that I could protect myself. But they don't care about that.
It makes a very good affirmative defense of necessity, because I do believe that if you store a firearm with quick access to it, that is done out of necessity, which has always been going all the way back to British common law, an affirmative defense that can be used against any crime with a mental element to it.
Well, listen, they're making their way through, I think by, what is it, the 20th or 28th? What's the final day for all these bills have to be up and out?
So what we're going to see is if the House bills don't get a vote here in the next couple of weeks, then they would be stalling out for this year. But I want your viewers to remember this is a biennial session, and we're in year 1, which means any bill that doesn't make it to the governor's desk this year still comes back next legislative session. And that's how the assault weapon ban was eventually passed in this state. It was House Bill 1240. It was in the second year of a biennial session that it finally got passed. So for everyone who's doing victory laps right now because some of these bills seem to be stalling out, I think it might be a little premature.
Okay. Well, until you move to Idaho, everybody can find you, William Kirk, right there at the Washington Gun Law. Online, you with your beautiful slick back hair, and you're always optimistic, even though it just seems every day there's another bad law coming out of Olympia for law-abiding citizens that want to be able to practice and be able to uphold their Second Amendment right. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate your time.